Okay, welcome to Inimitable Black Woman. I'm your host, Donna, and today we have a special guest. But before that, if this is your first time here, please follow us at IBW. And also, this is the place where we tell the stories of the storytellers. So hopefully, if you're creative coming here, you feel inspired to not only hear these women's stories, but to tell your own and also to learn things along the way. So, in terms of learning, we're learning today from Kara Stevens. Kara, how are you? Welcome.
Good. Really excited to be here, Donna.
All right, so let everyone know kind of your background, where you come from, what's your expertise, because we're going to get into that today.
Okay, so I'm founder of the Frugal Feminista, which is a platform really targeting the creation of a safe space for Black women to heal their relationship with money so they can actually grow their money and enjoy their money with a sense of ease and confidence without shame, without guilt, and unapologetically.
Okay, so first kind of get to know you question I want to ask before we get into all that is, was there a time in your life where you realized you were a Black woman?
Yeah, I think, little ways that you know that you're a Black woman. I think my major way that I knew I was a Black woman was when I was a vice principal in a school and I wasn't treated with the level of respect that I knew I deserved. And this was from other Black women. I know this like is a controversial thing, but it was this expectation that I take on more work for the community because I was of the community. And it was this kind of, you're the backbone, you're the strong one, you can take these types of beatings like emotionally and verbally from the school community and even the larger community, and you just have to deal with it because that's just how it is and that's just the role that you're supposed to play. And I remember being pregnant too and having to negotiate. Number one, I am a vulnerable person having a child inside of me growing, but no one sees me as worthy of someone to be protected. So I had to realize that it was the way society has groomed us to think that Black women, that their worth is only with what they can do for people, that they get to bear the brunt of everyone's poor behavior, even if it is societal structures that create difficult situations for many of us, and that we have to do it in silence. So it made me really realize that one, that, but then two, I had internalized that I almost was like, well, I can keep going, I can come back. I don't have to really tap into my feelings, acknowledge these feelings. I had to keep it pushing. So I think that's one of the major ways that I realized that I knew I was a Black woman. I had internalized those things. And then when I was younger, there are lots of ways, but in positive ways, I always, even though there was like issues growing up, the positive ways that I knew that I was a Black woman was my mom. She always celebrated my curves, my color, my lips, my nose. And so I had that juxtaposition of we are beautiful, but we are meant to be the burden of the world and bear the burdens of the world as a Black woman.
That's really that's funny. I think what's so interesting about what you said is how like being a Black woman is like amazing. Like we have all of these things that we can like look to and like highlight about like our experience. Like I would never not want to be a Black woman, but the reality is that as a Black woman, there are certain things that I take on that is not even of my like own creation. It's just how the world is like, okay, here's the role that we want you to play. So when it comes to money, how did you get into focusing on how to have a good relationship with money, not only for yourself, but wanting to spread it to other people?
Well, I think it started when I graduated from college. I was in a whole bunch of student loan debt, a whole bunch of credit card debt, and I did not want to pay it back. And I got extremely resentful. I got extremely angry that they kept on, writing me, sending me letters that I had to pay this money back. And I was of the impression that if I just ignored them, they'll catch the hint that I wasn't paying it back and they'll move on to somebody else. But the balances just kept on growing because I had late fees. And I didn't even know anything about credit scores at that time. But clearly, it impacted my credit score where I was in the 600s and the 500s not realizing there was an actual relationship between one, the promissory note that you signed when you were in high school to go into college, and then post-college, the lack of knowledge you had about the real world, and then the implications of what that would mean in your future if you didn't get your finances in order. And so what made me realize that it was important for me to start this healing journey was that I was in these situations and my credit score was bad. I didn't have a job. This was after 9/11. I'm from New York, and I had jobs here, jobs there. I had credit card debts coming. I had student loan repayment, and I just did not know what to do. And it was only when I opened up my bills and my mom happened to be there when I was doing it. And I was telling her, these people are joking. Why do they keep on asking me for this money? And she's like, girl, you got to pay that money back. I was like, really? I did not know. Oh. So I went to the library, honestly, that weekend and got a book called Girl Get Your Money Straight by Glenda Bridgeforth. And it was like the book was waiting for me at the library. And I was like, one thing I do know is how to read and write. So I read the book and it opened my mind to like, they're really serious about this money. And I got to be really serious about this money because I began to see the connection that if I didn't get serious about this money, I was going to have a lot of problems down the line. So it was better that I was figuring it out in my 20s. Even for some people that may be late, and sharing my experience with my girls. And I was like, y'all, do y'all know how to pay this money back? Because I was not trying to pay it back. Did you know what this happens to your credit score when you do this? I did not know. And they're like, me neither. On top of wanting to have the life that you were so kind of bought into by going to college, the partnership, the relationship, the job, the career, even the wardrobe. And none of that was happening when I graduated. I had zero of those things. And so just kind of sharing that I felt like a failure in a lot of ways. And my finances were one of the top things that I felt like a failure about. But through reading and sharing, I was able to share how I was getting out of it and kind of bringing my crew along. And I feel that's another aspect of feeling like a Black woman is that there's that sisterhood, but it was something that I chose to do. I didn't feel burdened by it because it was by my choice.
So, as a creative, and we've talked about and touched on this, as a creative, I personally just deal with kind of the inconsistencies of money, right? I think when you have jobs one minute and you get a good amount of money from it, and then you might not have that same job like a month or two down the line, or even more, depending on if you're able to find work. And it can feel like you don't have enough to do anything with, right? Because like it's coming in, it's going out, and it's not consistent. So, for us who feel like maybe we don't have money, like we don't have the money to fix things or even have enough money to start things, like what advice or what things would you say is like, here's what you can do though, so that you are setting yourself up?
I think the first thing is to actually track what money is coming in, right? Once you have a clear understanding of what you're spending on, you can determine if that is something that is mandatory. And then when they talk about mandatory, I'm talking about food, like you need food, you need your basic housing, right? You need money for transportation, and so you need money for like, health care systems and things like that. Now, making sure that your gigs or things that you pitch always meet that bare minimum can help you get smart about this job's not for me, or if there's negotiation, this is my floor for how much the least amount of money that I would do it for, right? So thinking about what are those basics. And I'm not saying you're going to live at that basic level, but it's important for you to know what is that number. Is it 3,000? Is it 2,000? Is it 2,500? Like, what is it, right? So you know that every month that 2,500 is going to go towards making sure that I can keep food in my belly and a roof over my head. Now, after that, what else comes after that? Well, if it is, I got to put money towards my savings, right? Or I have to get out of debt. That's the next set of money that, depending on what you make on a monthly basis, becomes the next priority for you. And it also helps you begin to see, once you kind of have that clear understanding, how much do I need to make in order just to have my bare minimum? What are the numbers I need if I wanted to pay off this credit card, or if I want to save $500 toward this emergency fund? How much would that be? And moving forward, it allows you to think about how many gigs do I have to take this month in order to do that. It allows you to backwards plan. So if you want your income to, even if it is inconsistent, it's at least you have that understanding. But what's equally important is that you get to decide how much money can I make this month? What do I have to do? How much do I have to ask for? How much can I negotiate for? And then you can decide to say, I want to have 3 times my bare minimum amount. So it makes me feel more comfortable that in the next 3 months, if something doesn't come, I have at least my bare expenses paid for. Great if I can, great if I can, but if I can't, I know that I'm taken care of in this kind of way.
When it comes to making your money grow, what is like, especially as like creatives or entrepreneurs,
Mhm.
what is some of the advice that you would give to start investing in yourself or making your money grow for you?
When it comes to investing, I think it's important for creatives to understand that this is like your livelihood, and this is you're both the HR person and the employee. So you have to think about your retirement more seriously than just say the person that has a 9 to 5. So it's extremely important that you, when you're thinking about investing, that you start with the basics when it comes to retirement. So if you open up a 401, I mean, if you open up a Roth IRA or something like a SEP IRA, which is for self-employed people, and when you do your taxes, you put the maximum amount that you can put away because it makes the rest of your income, you become more less uh you have an opportunity to have less taxes taken out of what's left because you've sheltered that money. So when you're thinking about investing in something like a Roth IRA, it grows with post-tax money, tax-free, meaning that you already pay the taxes, it keeps on growing, growing, growing. And when you take it out when you're 59 and a half, you don't have to pay taxes on it. So it allows you to be sheltered from having that money taxed as income because you put it away ahead of time. So that's one thing when thinking about investing for as a creative. And I think too, creatives also have to kind of own their power in terms of thinking what can be the various ways I can create income, and from those sources, maybe which one would be used for investing. So let's just say you have a gig. We have several gigs this month, right? And we say, just take the same number that we had at the top of our conversation. Like say it's $3,000 or $2,000 for how much your expenses cost. Now, if you come into $4,000, you know that maybe that extra $1,000, 200 is going to go towards savings, 200 is going to go towards investing, and maybe the other 600 is going to go toward debt elimination. Or you can change that extra 1,000 some way. But you know that anything above your bare minimum, that any extra money is going to go towards investing, even if it's the smallest amount. So if all you got is an extra $50 for the month, you're going to maybe say 25 is going to savings and 25 is going to go into investing. So you get into the habit of being in the market rather than time in the market. And what that means is, like, a lot of us think we have to have big, large amounts of money, but the beauty of compound interest is that it takes whatever you put in, it adds to it, and then that additional revenue is added to the principal, which is the original amount. So that original amount grows when it comes to compound interest, and then the interest and the grows on that new larger balance. That's why credit card debt is so dangerous, because it's the reverse. Like, when you're in debt and you have to pay interest on it, and then you don't pay it, and then you get a late penalty, then it's added to the principal. Now you're getting more debt on that higher principal. So you want to do the reverse. So I think it's important for us to just, any amount of money that comes to our hands that makes it after the basics, we thinking like we are creators, are investors. Let's just say is that we have to think that we are investors as creatives, and this is what it looks like after I've met my basic needs met. That money is going to grow for me because I'm saving it. Money's going to grow to me because I'm investing it, even if it's in the smallest way, because compound interest is my best friend.
And just to clarify, the investing would be in the IRA, right?
Correct. So basically, the IRA is an individual retirement account. Um, And each year the numbers go up. So I think for 2024, it's either 7,000 or 6,500. You do not have to do the maximum, but if you want to do the maximum, you would backwards plan. Let's just say you want to do it in 14 installments, right? So that would be $500. You need 14 times that you make $500 within a year, right? So that would be maybe not this check, but maybe next check. And so maybe it's one check in January because things are kind of tight, but maybe it's from each gig that I get in February where I have a surplus where I'm actually to put 1,000. And maybe there's another check in March that's really big. I put 2,000, but then April, there's nothing much going on. That's okay. But then May, you're able to do 200. So you're able to just say, what are the ways in which I can thinking about the last day I think to do a Roth IRA is like before April 15th for the previous year. So 2014, you for 2023, you can continue to invest up to April 15th of 2024. So you have the whole year in order to make that $7,000 mark. Or if this year is the first time you're doing, you say 7,000 is too much for me, maybe 6,000 or 5,000, even 4,000, whatever it is. Whatever the goal is, backwards plan how much will I have to make in order to do it in these various ways. And I think that makes it more doable. So if you even have like a chart, like something that you check off, okay, I need 14 opportunities to make $500, or I need 28 opportunities to make $250. Where can I find the money? And then you track it, right? So if you have $1,000 bonus that comes in, that means you've marked off 4 250s. So you're ahead of the game. So as long as you get to the finish line, doesn't make a difference how you do it. And I think that's what happens when you're creative, when things are inconsistent, is like, I'm not worried about the how. I'm just worried about the when, or vice versa. Like, it doesn't have to happen this exact time. All I know is I got to find 14 opportunities between one year to the next to find $500 in each of those opportunities, or 250, or whatever it is, and keep tracking until I reach my goal. And I think it's that flexibility that is the beauty of being a creative, that allows us to be open to what the universe brings in terms of opportunities and not have to worry about a 9 to 5. And it's that same innovation and same ability to kind of figure it out that you're able to plan and then work backwards to figure it out.
So, dealing with Black women when it comes to their relationship with money, what is something that you feel is an issue that comes up often in that? And what is a way that we can fix or deal with that?
I think for a lot of Black women that I've worked with, it's this sense of worthiness, that we are not worthy. We've been taught we've had to do without, that we have somehow Blackness and being a Black woman has become synonymous with the struggle, like always struggling and kind of coming together around our struggle. And I think that shows up in our finances in like some of the extreme ways. The fact that we struggled growing up, we're never going to struggle again. So we're going to get ourselves anything we want, even at the expense of our finances. Or you may find that you hoard and you don't even want to treasure and celebrate and give and just lavish yourself because you've been taught that that's frivolous, that's not important. What's most important is just getting the work done and keeping your head down. And I find that in both extremes, there's trauma attached to the messages that we were taught about worthiness. Like, what matters on the outside is more important than what you actually have in the bank. So you just kind of go out there and do whatever, because creating space and taking up space in the world means you have to show that you can purchase, like your purchasing power is more important than your wealth building power. And that leads us to making decisions on who knows going to think if I do X, Y, and Z. What's this person going to think? Are they going to think that I'm worthy if I don't have this or I do have that? And that makes us maybe very conscious, very susceptible to maybe brands or luxury items or names because we attach our worth to our ability to acquire them. And on the other hand, there's some of us that think that it's so beneath us when really, we really want them. But we downplay how much we want to have some of the nicer things in life because it somehow makes us more noble or more serious because we don't want them. And there's dysfunction, like I said, in both of those things. And I think one of the ways that we can start to fix it is one, acknowledging the trauma that we've had growing up. Poverty creates a lot of trauma, especially if you grew up poor. Or if you grew up without, or you grew up with people telling you that because you're a Black woman, you should want less, or because you're a Black woman, you may be a potential gold digger, so you shouldn't ask for anything. If you grew up in a particularly religious household where you don't want to be one of those fast girls that, are dressing for attention, and when you really want maybe just celebrate your body with things that make you look beautiful, and sometimes they cost more money, but you're told that that's not, womanly or godly or things like that. If you were an older child and you had to be the surrogate mother for your siblings, where your money becomes our money, or it translates as an adult is you're single and no children, so your money is every other person's money, and you enable financial dysfunction. And so once we're able to see the patterns, we'll begin to be able to create boundaries around it. And that could just be physical boundaries. Like when they call, I'm not picking up the phone because I know they're going to ask for money. I can text them and say, what's up? And then you can have a conversation in a medium that works for you. That could just be honest conversations about what you're doing. And it's also like tying up your money in things that are asset producing that you don't even have to have conversations because the money's just not there. And when it comes to also how do we fix it, I think it's letting go of the shame that's attached to why we may feel that we don't have what we don't have. There's some systemic issues that make the experience of Black women with money in this country particularly unique. Gendered racism, and what happens when Black women, well, first of all, Black people, but then when Black women are, the gender piece is attached to it, there is other ways in which our unique experience is translating to being paid less, right? Having to be the one to be caretakers of multi-level generations. So you have your grandmama and maybe your sister's kids in one house and on maybe one income, yours. And so you have to also understand that if the common conversation around Black women and money is a similar one where it's I have to do more with less, that is not the individual, it's the system. So there are ways in which you have to give yourself grace in all of that, that this something is there by design. And the ways in which we fight against it is to be like, acknowledge that it's unfair and still do the work of, number one, advocating for yourself, doing the most of what you have, but also putting in boundaries to tell other people to be adults too, right? Like just because there are systems against us doesn't mean that they get to completely give up their agency to do something with what they have. And I think those are the ways that Black women can begin to fix it. And I think another way that we can begin to fix it is to find community of those of us that are a little bit further ahead and aren't gatekeepers, right? So communities like this one, where you bring in people to talk about money in a way that it's not like some expert and I know this, I never experienced it. It's more like, this is what happened to me, girl, too. And here's how I did it. And here's how I'm still at this stage going through it. And let me share my resources. So I think all those kind of practical ways where you understand the structures, those interpersonal, introspective ways that you understand, and then the practical ways of finding community that allows you to see your future. Allow us to know that it's fixable, even if it's difficult, but it is fixable.
So, as a creative, often like we are having to negotiate our pay. And I know I feel really insecure about like asking for more money or even like knowing what is like the basis or what is like the consistency. Like I notice a lot of businesses that I've worked for, companies and things, they'll hide how much they're paying certain people so that people don't know even what to ask for. And so I would ask you like what is advice you would give to someone when they're negotiating their pay, how to not only do that, but how to see themselves in that process.
So I think that there are a few things. One, I would say is if there's an opportunity or there's someone that that has done similar work, you can ask them transparently, like, what has been your rate for this, right? Now that might be a range, or even if they're not comfortable giving you the number, you can say, can you give me a range? Or you can say, here's what I'm thinking. What are your thoughts about that? Is that kind of high or is that kind of low? Knowing this is all subjective. But even going back to our previous conversation of how much money do you need, right? you need to think about not even that basic number, but that extra good number. Like if you only wanted to maybe work once this whole month, what would that number be? And then kind of see would that make sense in terms of what is being as the scope of work. The other thing about scopes of work is that you can add things and take away things. So if you feel like the scope of work is what maybe the asking price is or what you want to ask for is normally out of your range and you feel like if you did more work or added something to it, you would feel good about it, then add something to it to show the value, right? So you feel like if you want to do like a 5-figure, this is 50K, is the first time you feel uncomfortable by asking for this money, but you know that if you did X, Y, and Z, you can see yourself in the energy of producing the work that has done that. I think that's a great way because pricing is very subjective. You know, people say this is how much I pay and this is how much I do project based sometimes, I do values based, some people do hourly, and there's pros and cons to each. And I do them all depending on which will give me the most money. I'm not gonna lie, right? So I'm like, okay, if you only do an hourly thing, then my hourly rate is going to be pretty high. But if you say do project based and you know this is the scope of work over a period of time, this is what I can produce. This is another structure you can use. You can also offer a not a referral, keep them on retainer. So you can say, hey, I'm able to do this work with a retainer involved over the course of a certain amount of time. I think we as creatives need to think about what are the various price structures that will allow us to have maybe more work over the course of time. And if it's not over a course of time, what can we do to make it the best value and feel comfortable with that number, as well as asking people for their numbers. And then just kind of shooting your shot and seeing what happens. I think in my experience, I have I've sometimes lowballed myself because I was afraid to ask. But there've other been instances where they counter offer with a lower number, but I would say things like, okay, I want to work with you. This would be the you know, not a compliment, this would be a one-time favor in good faith, because the next time that we work together, it will be this amount of money, right? And you can also ask for things that maybe not in money, but in kind. So if you are doing work, you can say, I want the pictures, the video, testimonials, referrals. I want the email list so you can pitch to other people. And you can put that in the contract. So I think when it comes to the conversations about negotiating, I know I have one of my biggest regrets was a large company, it was a huge company, and I was haggling over $3,000 and they went with somebody else. And that would have been a huge win for me had I done it, because just being in the room, I lost sight of what I wanted because I was so fixed on they didn't meet my numbers. They're not telling, you know, they're not going to tell me I'm not worth it. When it's not really that. It's about what's your long game as well. You know, like this would have led to this. I could have known these people. They know me. They know me. They're going to love me because I always got something to say. I always got something to add value. And just getting in the room may cost maybe $3,000 less, but who cares? Because this relationship is going to be 3, 4, 5 years when then my money comes back to me in another way. So I hope that helps in helping you see that it's not always that particular thing, that particular project, but sometimes it is. But thinking about what are the other ways that you can get your money and still feel confident about pitching various rates and seeing what comes out of it.
I think that's really good. I haven't thought about it like that. It's like if I can't sometimes get it in the financial sense, it's like, well, what are the other benefits that I can get from this situation? Or what can I
Right,
add on more where I feel justified in what I'm asking? Or even just
right,
like, what is my long-term goals so that when I'm going into these situations, I go, okay, I need this minimum.
right,
Shoot my shot in this way, but here's how this is going to work in the bigger plan. Like, where is this place of this job? That's really good. I haven't
right.
thought about it in that many angles.
Mhm,
Just a few more questions. What would you say
mhm.
is like the biggest lie that we've been told about money?
The biggest lie we told about money for Black women or just in general?
I would, this black woman, I mean, I care about everyone, but
Yeah,
for
of course.
us,
Well,
I care about everyone. So you could do both if you want, or if you feel
yeah.
whichever one you feel like has the most impact for
I
people.
would say, yeah, I think both across the board. I think for women and then Black women in particular, that asking for money makes you fill in the blank, which is a negative. Do you know what I mean? It makes you a gold digger. It makes you ungodly. It makes you money hungry. Means you only care about money and not people. So all these negative, selfish, self-serving, um, blind ambition related ideas when it comes to money. When in fact, money gives some of the most vulnerable people, which are Black women in our society, the most unprotected people, the ability to protect themselves, you know what I mean, and protect those that they love. And protection comes in all types of form. Protect their mental space, get out of toxic work relationships or projects that don't serve them, get out of poverty, like move from one home that maybe doesn't have, this is, speaking frankly, like having homes that have roaches and mice, just like that's not good, it has asbestos, like moving from one place to another. Moving from one country to another, moving from one state to another, getting a car, to get you from one place to, it creates opportunities, it creates ease. And what that means is it allows, especially if we're creative, to be even more creative and more innovative. The more rest we have, or the ability to restore, um, it allows us to be able to think in different ways, that having the stress of having to meet our needs on a weekly basis and not be confident we'll be able to, you can't really work that way. So money is a key part of wellness for the most vulnerable group of people in this country, and that's Black women. So that's what I would say.
So one last thing I want to touch on is kind of coming from something you said earlier. You talked about the benefit of Black women telling their relationship stories when it comes to money, what they're going through,
Mm-hmm.
what happened to them. I
Mm-hmm.
just wanted to touch on that one more time because I think it plays so much into like the goal of like this podcast and like what I do is the fact that I think there's so much power and us
Mm-hmm.
specifically speaking up and speaking out about our experiences and what we're experiencing because of just the community aspect and things like that. So if you could just touch on like how you've seen that type of storytelling and sharing be impactful to not only you but those around you
For
and those
sure.
that
I mean,
as well.
oh yeah, I mean, just the fact that, so just a quick story about the Frugal Feminista. The Frugal Feminista was first about me getting out of debt, right? And my journey toward getting out of debt and helping other Black women kind of get their money right. But then I shifted toward talking about the emotions around money, because despite having gotten out of debt, I still had this sense of unworthiness, this sense of fear, this sense of anxiety around money. And clearly wasn't the numbers in my account, because I had physically enough there to technically to feel comfortable, but I didn't. And I had to go deeper into my childhood, into all the things we kind of talked about, in order to be able to liberate myself. And in being able to let go of this pain, this shame, and all these feelings of inadequacy that I had, that would ultimately impact my marriage, in the early years. It was not the best. It was not the best, and even impact my parenting, right? So in sharing that story, I have freed other women to be like, girl, me too. Do you know what I mean? Girl, me too. Like there's no shroud of shame and secrecy around it, because I am you, you are me. That's one. And I think two, the answers are in the room. So we can crowdsource the solutions. Like I may be the person that started the movement, so to speak, but we all have lived experiences and have been able to solve problems in some kind of way. And that's an asset that we can bring to the table to be able to solve these collective problems, and then take the solution and then adapt it to our particular circumstances to get the things that we want out of our lives in that moment, in that season. So I think it's really important that in sharing these stories, that it always comes from a place of lessons learned and assets that came as a result of these experiences. Like, and being able to take any experience that you have and have a balanced perspective on what that was. You know what I mean? So even in the most difficult circumstances, even though when I shared the top of being in this school system that was just not helping me, it taught me I had to go to therapy. It taught me I had to rethink my relationship with, being a strong Black woman. It taught me that if I'm going to have this girl child that was growing inside of me, I had to do things differently. because I did not want to repeat the cycle. It means that I had to kind of think and give my mom some grace because her relationship with money and her childhood wasn't the best. And so I had to both understand that she could not have given me what I needed because she didn't get what she needed. And so my healing became all those things became the springboard for my healing. And so I think we need to understand that there's something there for us, for our evolution, that serves us in some of these most difficult circumstances, but we have to be of the mindset to look for them and to kind of farm them so we can grow and plant different seeds, so other things can flourish.
That's really beautiful. So how can people find you? What do you have
Yes.
on? All that good
Yes.
information.
Yeah, so you can find me online. I'm on Instagram, Frugal Feminista. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm Kara Stevens. And the website is thefrugalfeminista.com. And I do have my book, Heal Your Relationship with Money. I've done a relaunch of it because I never did the launch the first place a few years ago because I didn't know how to do much of a launch. And that's another big lesson is that there's never too late to do anything. Like, who said I can't relaunch something at another time? No one except me. So I decided to say, why not? And so, can I show the book?
Yeah, show it.
Yeah. So this is the book, Heal Your Relationship with Money, and I love it, and so do you. A lot of you do because it breaks down your relationship with money in easy to understand ways. Week one is all about what is the money story that you inherited. Week two is really identifying what's your true financial voice when you're not listening to all those influences. Week three is how do you strengthen that financial voice? Like now that you heard it, but do you listen? How can you turn the volume up on it? And then week four is like, what are those systems and structures that allow us to sustain that voice? And I love it because it was the book that I needed when I was going through all that financial trauma. And I, think about Toni Morrison, and she's like, sometimes you have to write the book that you need to read, and that's what I did. And I wrote this book like 3 years ago or 4 years ago, but I've updated with like graphics and quizzes and things like that, so you can really go deeper. But I wrote it over 3 weeks at a Starbucks, and I cried each week because it was the stuff that I needed to get out, and just hearing the book is it like universities and personal finance coaches use it, executive coaches use it with their clients, therapists, Black therapist office use it. So it's really great to see it's taken on a life of its own. And I love it because I think that we need to have more healing. I think healing is the way to wealth. And I think you think investing is the way to wealth, of course, but if you don't even feel worthy of investing, even though where your money is, if you feel like, if money comes, you won't keep it, what's the point? And you don't get that thought shifted, you're not going to do it. So I think that healing is the vehicle for wealth building.
I love
And
that.
that's what the book is about. Like, how do you heal? So then, girl, wealth will come. Get your healing, the wealth will come because you'll be a different person. Your relationship is going to change with yourself. It's going to change with money. Then the wealth is going to come.
That's perfect. Kara, thank you so much for your time, your advice, your
You.
knowledge. It has been
Yeah.
awesome, and I know people are going to hear this and really benefit from your words. Everyone, please go check out her, go check out her book, go get her book, all the things.
Yes.
And as always, thank you for being a part of the IBW family now. I
Yes.
appreciate it. Welcome to the tribe. And yeah, as always, anyone listening, you can follow us at IBW. If you want to be interviewed or you've had anything you want to comment and say, you can email at info@ibw.com. Have a good day. Bye.